it grows. And let's hit got it on that. Minimize your cast. You shouldn't have a cast of 10. Try and get 1 to 4 main characters in it. Minimize the amount of extras that you need. You write in a restaurant scene, for instance, a 2-page dialogue scene in a restaurant. Well, you got to fill up all those tables. Forget about just getting the location, which is doable, but you got to fill up all those chairs unless you want an empty restaurant. And getting extras in a short film where I doubt you're going to be paying a lot of money, it's tough. So think about scenes that don't involve crowds. That big rock concert scene you want to have, those are tough. It's tough to get those people to show up. And then unless your movie is really about this and it really needs this, I would stay away from action, stunts, moving cars. Just scenes, dialogue scenes in cars can be tricky to shoot. And VFX. So, some people have connections in those areas and can get those things. That's great. And there are some cheap ways to do some pretty cool action and stunts, but you need stunt, if you're going to do it right and do it safely, you need stunt coordinators, stunt actors, explosions and stuff like that. And also those take a lot of time to set up and do right. And multiple cameras usually. So it kind of all grows again. Pre-production. Let's talk a little bit about casting. For those of you who live in LA, if you've ever tried to cast a movie, it's probably one of the easier things to do. I've been in some cities where it's really tough. LA, New York. In LA, there's 3 online casting sites. I will put them actually in the chat. How about that? Let's see if I can manage to do that. There's 3 casting sites that some of you may know about.
Mark, you don't need to do that.
Okay.
I've got a breakdown, which I will upload later, of an outline of what we're talking about.
Okay, great.
But I saw Josh just said Backstage is my favorite.
Backstage is great. That's one of them. Breakdown Express and Now Casting are 3 of the top ones, and they're free to use. Breakdown Express possibly might charge a small amount, but I think that can be free as well. There's just lots of really good actors in the LA area and in New York who will probably work for free. Some of them might require some money, but we're talking about, maybe $100 a day. And you can choose whether you want to use union actors or not. If you do use a union contract, you're going to obviously have to pay more for them. But if you're writing roles in the age range of between like 18 and 35, you're going to get just hundreds of submissions and be able to find some very good actors. And so the way the process works, basically, after you post your for your film, a little synopsis of what it is and the rules that you're looking for, you can really ask people to put themselves on self-tape, and any decent actors all set up to do that in their home, and you'll get all the submissions. Then you choose from that group. Let's say you get 100 submissions for one role, let's just say. You would go through those. A lot of times they'll post their acting reel right into the site, and you can look at them and then choose let's say you choose 30 people that you want to see them audition. Then you would communicate through the site. You would send them the sides, which are the script pages, and they would put themselves on self-tape. You'd get those. And then after that, you might bring in 10, 15. You could do it in person. These days, Zoom auditions are really common, especially for the early rounds, and hold a Zoom audition and give them scheduled times and audition them. And that way, if it's live, you can give them some direction and really get a feel for them. And then eventually you get down to your top ones, and then you can do some chemistry reads, which is, let's say you have more than one person. Let's say you have, two people that have scenes together that you want to see their chemistry. You can interchange them and audition them against each other. And so you can eventually get a feel for even how the chemistry works between them, and then hire them. And then moving on from casting, but sticking with actors, is then I would set up some rehearsal time. I think the best way to sort of go about it is to have some private, a chat, at least one or two with each actor separately. And again, you can do that over Zoom and talk about the character and the role, and then get the actors together and read through the scene. Some directors like to get the scene up on its feet and actually try and figure out the blocking. Some prefer just to do readings around a table and just really read through it and talk about it. Budget. You can pretty much get, if you're not using the professional tool for that is Movie Magic, but you can just find a budget template off of Google and go through and estimate all the costs of your movie. If you're getting people to work for free and you're using either your own equipment or a friend's equipment, the biggest costs are going to be around catering. Believe it or not, it's the lunches and the craft service that end up being more than you might think. You gotta, especially if you're not paying people, you gotta feed them well. That's at least do that, because that'll keep them going for the 12-hour shoot dates. And locations. Locations is on all the student films that I do, that is really the toughest thing. Actors you can find, crew you can find, equipment you can find. Locations, you're up against the world. You've got to convince people to let you shoot there for a decent price. In LA, it's everybody's very production savvy, and they're gonna know what the going rates are. They've probably, almost every place has been approached to shoot there, and the studios pay a lot of money. And so simple things like a house, you might think, well, there's a lot of houses, that could be very easy, but no. Try and get into somebody's house that you don't know. It's going to be costly. So think about, if you're writing a script to make into a short film, think about locations you have access to, that you feel like you can actually get for a cheap price. Obviously, the cheapest things are just that are owned by the city, like parks and streets. Then you're only dealing with the permit that you're going to have to go to. Film LA is the place that kind of handles most of the permitting. And that'll be your only cost. If you are shooting anywhere in Los Angeles, inside out, your own house even, you need a permit. Why? Because film tends to it's not just you and a camera. Usually you've got a crew, you've got cast, you're making noise, you've got trucks, the city. Even if it's your own house, it's going to impact your neighbors. They're going to call the police, if you have some unruly neighbor, and the police are going to show up, and the first thing they're going to say is, where's your permit? And you're going to say, I'm shooting in my house. And they go, it doesn't matter, you need a permit. So you have to get a permit, but you only have to pay a location fee and have a location release from places that are privately owned. The city places that you might shoot, like a park, you just need the permit. You can talk a little bit about crew. You can make a film with just you, which maybe a lot of you have done already. But when you start to get into something that's going to look a little better, I recommend a small crew. And sort of what I'd recommend, something in the 8 to 10 person size. The crew positions that I think are critical beyond the director. Obviously, you need a good DP, which is your director of photography, who's going to be in charge of lighting everything and depending on how visual you are. If you're not strong with knowing where you want the camera to be, a good DP will really help you with that. The DP is going to need probably at least 3 people to help them. One is going to be their first assistant camera person who's going to build the camera and do the focus. And the other 2 will be there to help do the lighting. And if you have a dolly to work with that. So it's a DP and 2 or 3 people. You need a good sound person. You could get away with just one person holding a boom mic and either holding the recorder. You could plug the mic into the camera and record right into the camera. It's better if you have it separate. And these days, one person can actually handle that quite well. You could use an assistant director to really, so that the director has some time to just focus on what they need to focus on, which is the creative end. The assistant director takes all the logistics off of the shoulders of the director and actually runs the set and makes sure everybody knows what's next and who we need and the timing for everything. So the director doesn't have to do that. And then you need a couple people handling the production design and art work, which would be any set dressing or decorating that you might need, furniture moved, setting up the set to make it look nice, and handling props. So there should be 1 or 2 people there. Most films need a makeup hair person. That could be 1 person that does makeup and hair. And then lastly is a script supervisor, which you can get away without one, but they do basically 2 main functions. One is to write down all the shots that you're doing as you're doing them and all the takes and noting everything about those so that you don't lose track of that on set, and also the editor knows, even if it's you, knows how many takes and that you have. But also they do a very important job beyond that, which is watching out for continuity, which is mainly the positions of the actors. This can really make editing look horrible if the actors are not repeating the same actions in the wide shot that they do in the tighter shots. If they pick up a cup drink, am I drinking with my right hand or left hand? Because if they mix that up, you end up having a mismatch between, in the wide shots the left hand, tight shot it's the right hand. So a script supervisor really helps with that and will make the editing hopefully better. So that's about 10 people or so that I think will make most films go a lot better. Let's see, locations. We talked about permits and location releases. We sort of talked a lot about that. Finding locations that are close together. One of the things you want to avoid is in the middle of your shoot day to pack everything up and move to another location. That's called a company move. When studios are doing it, they call it the circus. It's all those trucks you see parked. Imagine having to move all of them. That takes a long time, but even for a short film and a small crew, it takes time to wrap up things, put things in cars, pack up and drive. So try and think about limiting your locations. And if you do have multiple locations, have them close by. So you don't, if you can, it's very hard, but if you can, so you're not driving across town, especially not in the middle of your shoot day. Scheduling. How do you schedule your movie? Because let's say you have a 15-page script. What do you shoot first? What do you shoot second? You do not shoot them in chronological order. The main thing that a schedule revolves around is how to be efficient and how to shoot in the least amount of days possible, because every day costs you money. If you're renting equipment, it's usually a daily rental. If you're paying people, it's their costs, it's the food every day. So you're trying to shorten the amount of days that you shoot. And so the main driver of that in your schedule is you shoot everything in the same location, one after another. So you finish each location, because the most inefficient thing would be to shoot in one location, move to somewhere else, and then have to go back to that other location and reset up and relight. So that's the biggest driver of how you work out a schedule. Um, the other things that influence a schedule is how many script pages can you shoot in a day. And that's how professionals base it on. They look at the page count. You know, a big budget studio movie, they'll shoot about 3 script pages a day. That's their pace, sometimes less, especially if there's any kind of big action scenes. They'd be a lot less, but regular dialogue scenes, it's about 3 pages a day versus a TV series that is really going a lot quicker. Like an hour show, for instance, they're going to shoot in the 6 to 8 pages a day. They've got a big crew and they're very efficient. What I would suggest for you guys, depending on your skill level, is in the 3 to 4 script pages a day. So if it's a 15-page script, you're looking at 4 to 5 pages to 4 to 5 days to shoot that. And again, this is, all very loose, some days, and it's not going to break up completely evenly, but you don't want to have a 6-page day on your schedule unless you were just a crack, company and you had a lot of, good crew and you were very well trained as a director. And likewise, you probably wouldn't want a 1-page day on your schedule because that just means you've got a higher page count on the other days. So trying to even it out, keep your locations, shoot out each location, and look at about 3 to 4 script pages a day. Shot listing and floor plans, I'm a huge believer in that. The way I work and the way I teach how to work is to do a shot list and a floor plan. A floor plan is simply an overhead view of a set. You just simply sketch out the where the walls are and the key pieces of furniture, doorway. And then you write in, the first thing you do is you write in the blocking, how are the actors going to move on the set? And to do that, you've got to read the scene several times and just really imagine it. If you're not working it out with the actors, which often you don't even have the actors cast when you're working on your initial blocking. So imagine it several times. Think about it in different ways. Try it out in your mind. A lot of times sometimes I'll act out the scenes myself. I'll play it and I'll kind of try and see, when do I want to get up? On what line does it feel right to get up? And what line does it feel right to cross? Or sometimes I'll take a salt and pepper shaker and move them around the table, or little dolls. And so work out what you think will be the best blocking for the scene. Not too much movement, not too little, something that's just right. Obviously, if it's a dinner table scene, probably not a lot of blocking in that. And then what you draw that in, and then you draw in your shots where you want the camera to go in all the different positions. And I'm not going to go into a whole thing on master shots and screen direction and all that, because we don't really have time for that. But I just wanted to kind of give you a general sense of how I would approach the planning of it. And so what I do with that planning is I do that for me. And in that process, a lot of things occur to me that are not even about shots. As I'm thinking about the blocking, I start to think, oh, wouldn't it be cool if there was maybe some food they were eating? It's not indicated in the scene, but if we added some food here, might be an interesting thing. And then the person has a reason to go to the refrigerator and get up and pull out something, and they're cutting something. And I always love it when actors have what's called business, which is props that they're doing something with their hands. It gives them something other than just standing here and saying a line. So the whole planning procedure gives me a lot of ideas in that way. And so that's really great. Now, when I get to the set with the actors or rehearsal, I don't pull this out and tell them this. I don't say, you go there on this line, you go here. If I did that, I wouldn't really be respecting the actors because they're very creative people and they're very talented. And B, it probably wouldn't look as organic because they would just be doing what you're telling them to do rather than finding it. So what I do is I get the actors there in a rehearsal or the first time we're doing it on set, and I give them their starting positions. I will tell them that. I say, why don't you start sitting down here and you're going to come in through the door. Action. And that's it. I shut my mouth and I let them go. And I see what happens. And I just sit back and watch. Now, if they happen to come up with something that's better than what I had planned for, I'm going to go with that because that's going to be fantastic. If they don't, if they come up, I watch the whole thing, beginning to end of that scene. And if they, maybe there's one or two things that I like, but the rest I don't, we end it, I go cut, go, let's go again, let's start it again. And now I start to interject. So I'll go, let's go back to the starting positions, action. They start to go, and as soon as they go to a place where I want to change something, I say, let's hold there. What if you really want to get away from him in this scene? So maybe you don't stand next to him. Maybe you go over to the fridge because you want to get away from him, but you also want to get something out of the fridge. And I start to make those suggestions. I try and do it in a actor motivation way. The way you language things is important on the set. So I give them a reason so that they know why they're doing something. Not because I want a great shot over there, in other words. That doesn't motivate an actor. An actor needs to know what the character wants. So, and then I slowly shape the scene. So that's why the coming up with the blocking the shots, what's really helpful about that, first of all, it calms me down from getting to the set. If I hadn't done that, I'd be like, oh my God, what if I don't come up with anything? I'd be very nervous. So it gives me a sense I've got a plan to fall back on, but I'm going to let the actors find it and work with me in a collaboration, because that's what it is. And then if I want them to do something different, we'll slowly shape it. So bit by bit, we'll shape it into something really great. I usually like to plan to have about 20 shots in a whole day planned. I don't know why, but it seems to have come, and I've made 16 movies and 17 or 19 episodes, and 20 has been a bit of a magic number. Obviously, sometimes we get less, sometimes we get more, but general camera setups, 20 is a good number. And then usually what I count is, like, if I do a master wide shot, that's 1. I come in to do a medium shot, that's 2. But if I go from a medium shot, which is the way I'm framed right now, to a close-up, I won't really count that because not much changes. The lighting doesn't change. Camera just moves a little bit. So anything that really is going to require change of lighting, whenever you change the direction of the camera, you're going to have to relight. So I count those. And when I come up with 20, that I know is going to be enough for that day. So after I do all my shot lists and planning, I look at the schedule then, and I see the scenes I have to do per day. I go back to my shot list, I count them up. And if I've got 30 on a day, something's going to have to change. I'm either going to have to take another look at my shot list and pare down some shots, or I'm going to have to talk about changing the schedule. In production, I usually schedule 12-hour days. That's the kind of industry standard. You feed everybody every 6 hours. That's the industry standard and the union requirement, actually. And we want to give 12 hours in between shooting. That's called turnaround. You want to give your crew 12 hours turnaround. So which means you can't shoot a night scene and be done at 3 in the morning and call people back at 8 the next morning. You got to give them 12 hours, which generally means, if you were scheduling, this is more than a short film, but you can't have your night scenes first and then go into your day scenes. You've got to turn your crew around, or else you're never going to get back to days. So generally you want to schedule your day scene. Let's say you have some night scenes in your short film. Leave those to the end. Start with your days and then get into your nights. You can have a split day, what's called a split day, where Let's say that would be a 12 p.m. call time. So 12 hours, you're working from 12 p.m. to 12 a.m. It's a split day, half daytime, half night. If the whole day is night, your whole shooting day are night exteriors, which you've got to shoot at night unless you want to shoot what's called day for night, which nobody really does anymore. But if you're shooting night for night outside, your call, you're looking at like a 6 p.m. call, then you're shooting till 6 in the morning. So you may want to think about limiting your night exterior. If you've got 4 pages of night exterior in one location, that's you're going to spend 12 hours out there. So you might want to think about that. It's very doable. My first film, The House on Sorority Row, was all done at night. And luckily I slept on location, which made it really easy. I could roll out of bed and just be right there. And then I kind of want to wrap up with post-production, and then we can take some questions. Lots of times, student films, short films, the director is the editor, and that's pretty common. I'm a huge fan, mainly because I don't know the software that well, of getting an editor, but for other reasons as well. Editors, you have another viewpoint, which is really important. You were there on the set. These were all your shots. You're going to not be very objective. Whereas an editor is very objective. They don't care how much time it took you to get that special shot. If it sucks, it sucks, and whereas for directors, sometimes they don't want to kill their babies, which is what it's called. And you've got to be ruthless if you want to, make a successful short film. And you only want to keep the stuff that looks good. So if you can have an editor, but lots of directors are editing their own stuff. I would say once you finish shooting, it takes, if you've got an editor or if you're able to just edit it almost full time, it's going to take you about a week to really get a good first cut of a 15-minute movie. And then I'd say about another 2 to 3 to 4 weeks to work with it and get another cut and another cut and another cut. You're going to probably have to cut it, come up with at least about 4 or 5 cuts, maybe more, where you've totally recut and refined and refined and refined. It's like writing. Really, editing, it's the same as writing. Writing is rewriting. Editing is re-editing. You cut it, you try it, you get the film together in a cut, you show it to people. That's super important. But bring in people that are filmmakers, that know how to look at a rough cut, because a rough cut is very different from just watching a movie in a theater. It doesn't have music often, or it has, temporary music. It has very few sound effects. It doesn't have any color correction, so the color sometimes changes. So you need an audience that's kind of used to that, so that they're not so hung up and thrown by those kinds of things. So bring in 3 or 4 people, or send links and get reactions from people, other filmmakers that have some experience watching a rough cut. I think that's really important. And then the focus of your editing is all about what's called locking the picture, meaning you've got the edit finally the place where you want it, but what you haven't been working on, and you shouldn't, is the sound. Don't spend early time in your editing working on sound effects, because you're going to change the picture and suddenly need new sound effects. Just focus on getting your picture and dialogue all edited. And once you're very happy with that, you lock the cut and you don't change the picture edits anymore. And now you're going to work on sound effects, and music. And hopefully you can get a composer. There's tons of composers out there. Lots of them want to get more experience working in film and get their reel together. Certainly I would encourage everybody to get a composer. You can do the sound effects editing yourself and start to build multiple tracks. You're going to have background sounds. You're going to have sounds of specific things. You may have to bring your actors in to do what's called ADR, automatic dialogue replacement, also called looping, where they come in and have to talk over certain lines that maybe weren't recorded that well on set, or there was an airplane going overhead. And And then you're going to get all that together, and that's going to take, you want to give yourself a month at least or more to do your sound effects editing and your composing. And then you put it all together in a final mix. You're going to probably want to do that at a professional place, but there are a lot of people that have them in their homes. They're multi-channel mixers who are skilled at mixing all of that. But it's also very artistic, and as the director needs to be there and make some decisions. I want this a little louder. Let's start the music a little later. Let's bring up the music louder here and then soften it. There's a lot of things that go on in that final mix. And you're going to need about 3 to 4 days to mix your 15-minute movie. And then lastly, is the color correct? This also can be done on your laptop if you have DaVinci or other software that can do it. Your DP, your cinematographer, should come in and make the decisions on this scene. Let's make it a little cooler. Let's warm up this scene. Let's make this scene a little darker. And those are the things you do in the final color. You add some titles and you got your movie. And that's it. The last thing I want to say about a short film, and I learned this in high school because I was already making little short films, which is nothing is easy. People think, oh, this one, it's like 2 characters in 1 room, easy, no problem. I don't know why, but anytime you pull a camera out, suddenly airplanes start gravitating overhead, the police sirens start happening, your actor can't show up, you got the location release sign from the wrong person. It's just a million things. Movie making, it's not like you're a painter working on your own. You got the canvas and that's it. No, movies are a collaboration with a lot of people, and you're dealing with the public, usually. And anything can happen, and weather and sound. And it's just it's like war. It's like going to war. And so you have to take that attitude and realize that just about every film, and I get this from student filmmakers, I took this film, I helped out this filmmaker because I thought this was going to be so easy. It's like, nothing is easy, especially if you want to make it look good. So I'll leave it with you with that.
It's thank you very much, Mark. Really fantastic presentation. I've got a couple of questions for you. First, I just want to share a story. Mark and I, we went to the same high school together, and he was talking about, I remember that was the first film I ever worked on, was working with Mark. And it was also the first film I ever got fired off of. Maybe the last one too. I was I think of the assistant cameraman, the loader, and we were shooting it in 16 millimeter. And, and I like you said, nothing is easy. And I'm like telling Mark, yeah, I can do it. I know how to do it. I have a 35 millimeter camera, I could stills and all that. Well, what did I do? I left the.
Yeah, the film attaches onto kind of like a spindle, and then that goes in the film. And oftentimes when you take the film off, the spindle comes with it. That's a part of the camera. When we returned the camera, the first thing they said was, "Where's the spindle?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I call Steve.
And I go, "What is a spindle?" But yes, but that was our rocky start. But we made up for it. We've been working together for many, many, many years. And a couple questions in general, and then open up for questions, and I'll throw some more things in. Okay, it sounds expensive. It sounds like making a this short film, 10 to 15 minutes, is going to cost you a lot of money. You're talking about a crew, 10 people, maybe more, post-production, editing. My experience of doing a short film was when I went to USC Film School, and I did the graduate film. It was called the 480. And in that case, the equipment, and it was financed by the school. What I know at UCLA, the students have to pay for the cost of the film, but the equipment's included. Do you have any idea, range of what a short film might cost?
Well, I mean, UCLA, we get some of this, anything we shoot on campus is free. So those locations are free. The equipment is free. Sometimes we'll rent some outside gear. And we're usually not paying our crew or paying the actors. And you'll never guess how much these films cost. They're generally in the $10,000 to $15,000 range. Yeah. Where does all that money go? Well, locations and food are two of the top. If they don't film on campus, you might pay $1,000 a day to a location. If you want an apartment, for instance, you're going to get on, Airbnb and try and find places where you can actually film and shoot. And they're going to charge you, $1,500 a day or whatever. You're going to probably rent a van to pick up equipment and just transport things around. If you have some extras, you may have to pay them because they're like the least likely to show up for free. You're feeding everybody. Catering might be $700 a day for lunches. And then on top of that, you have craft service. You want a table that has some healthy snacks, hopefully. That might cost about, $200 a day for your crew. So things add up. If you have anything in production design, are you just going with the environment exactly the way it looks, or do you require renting some props, possibly dressing a set? Then you could spend a couple $1,000s in set dressing, maybe 3 sets, and making them a little prettier, bringing in flowers, changing this desk to that, renting this thing. It adds up quick. Then a couple other things you don't have to pay for when you're in film school is the permits are only $25 to film students at Film LA. And I don't know how much they would be for a low budget short film. I doubt it's going to be as high as like a studio. They would charge a studio. But so they could be maybe in the 100 to 200 a day, possibly for permitting. I'm not sure. And then insurance. At UCLA, insurance is provided. The students do pay a little. They pay about $300 for insurance, but that's a student rate. If you're,
What is the insurance for?
well, there's two basic things. You want the equipment. All the equipment that is very expensive. You drop a camera, especially if you've rented it. Yeah, the rental places will only rent you equipment if you're insured. Or you buy their insurance. So any of the equipment needs to be insured. And the other thing are people. Actually, there's a third thing, property damage. If you're in a location and your grip takes a C-stand and whacks it through the wall and call it a hole. Lots of things, that's why people don't like film crew shooting in their houses, because they can cause some damage. So you have to have that insured.
What
And then-
about,
and then people getting injured. It's the other
Yeah.
thing.
what about, guerrilla filmmaking? You shooting your film with your iPhone these days
Mhm.
and, going that way. Any
Yeah, there are.
thoughts about that?
Yeah,
I think that's sounds very high. That's a lot of money.
it is. Yeah, there are some distinctions that Film LA will make if it's just you and a camera and you're hand holding the camera, kind of like a news crew. News crews, they go run out and they don't have to get a permit, right? That's because they're not setting up lights. They're not cables across the sidewalk. There's no tripod that's going to impede anybody. As soon as you start to do that stuff, you get elevated to having to, really make sure you have a permit. And that's the negative thing about LA. LA, they're all very shooting savvy, and anybody who doesn't want, like some store owner, for instance, who doesn't want your film crew next to you, suddenly they're going to be making some noise. You're going to get lawnmowers turning on so that because they know if it's a studio, you have somebody running over there with $100 paying off the person with the lawnmower. So you have to expect that if you're out in the public, if you're shooting in your house, most likely, and you don't have a big footprint, you could get away with no permit. And, you know, if you have a nice neighbor, tell them we're going to have some people coming in and out. It's probably fine. But be prepared that, you know, you might have somebody calling the police and somebody asking you for your permit. So yes, you can do some things and kind of skirt certain things. And I shouldn't be saying this on a recorded Zoom because I certainly wouldn't advise. In fact, we don't let our students do this at all. And
That's
in
fine.
fact, I don't know, Stephen, if you heard about the USC film shoot where a student died. I think it was a week ago.
No, I did not hear about it.
Yeah, it was a USC film shoot, but it was a Chapman student who they were shooting dune buggies out in the desert and they were flaunting all the rules. The dune buggy turned over and a young man died. Filmmaking is you know, can be dangerous. Lights can fall on you. You can burn down things. You're working with electricity often. And also there's that like gung-ho attitude of like, we got to get that shot. You know, anybody who's directed a movie, I don't care how big or small, they have that, you know, we got to get this, we got to get this. And you're kind of blind to all the safety rules. Jump in the car, just get it. Yeah, the sun's going down. There's a lot of pressure and energy around getting shots. And we kind of forget, wait a second, there's some safety issues here.
All right, does people, you have any questions for Mark? Yes, go ahead. Just unmute yourself. There you go.
Yeah, hey, Adriana.
Hello, how are you, Mark? How are you, Stephen, everyone? Yeah, I just had a question about because I'm more recently, I just moved to LA and I'm really looking to get into film. I do have a videography and finance business background. But I find that like when you were saying, I probably where I'm least experienced is in dealing with actors, because even a lot of the videography that I did, I moved from Miami, you know, it was corporate things, it was unprofessional people who weren't actors, a lot of it. So obviously you have to actually tell them what you want more specifically, but dealing with actors, I feel very insecure a little bit. Because I don't really know what the standard is. I haven't seen a bunch of people directing actors. So when you say that you kind of give them their starting point and then kind of let them take off, like I did a short film with my family, and like for me, I find that like if I want to get, and I know you said that don't limit it to like because you want it shot that way, but the aperture in the camera or the lighting in a certain place, so they can't just walk around and do whatever, because if not, you know, like let's say it's not a moving camera and you need the aperture in a certain way or the light hitting in a certain way, you kind of have to tell them or constrain them, or, you know, when you're blocking, you have to walk this way, but don't do this because then you're out of the, you know, the light from the back or whatever, right? I mean, so how do you take into consideration the cinematography aspect, you know, the lighting aspect, camera aspect, and also letting the actor do their thing?
Yeah, no, fantastic question. I'm going to put in the chat one of my favorite books, Directing Actors by Judith Weston. It doesn't talk about the cinematography part, but it is fantastic for how to language things to actors and how to direct actors. It's absolutely the Bible. Judith Weston, I've taken classes with her in person. She's fantastic.
I just, speaking of, just to interrupt you here, put in the chat, I just put the outline of what you discussed in the chat, so people can,
great.
they can download that as well.
So yeah, Adriana, it's a fantastic question. What you're talking about there is you're putting the cart before the horse. You never want to set up your camera before you get your actors out there. What comes first are your actors, because they are, remember in my order, it's script, then actors, and then camera. It's you before, and I have to wrestle my students to the ground to stop them from, when they get to a location, the first thing they want to do is put that camera, oh, we're going to shoot here. How do you know you're going to shoot there? You haven't even rehearsed with your actors yet. You don't know if it's going to work best there. So get your actors out there, work with them, get your blocking, then you decide what to shoot based on them. Now, there are times, and when you were talking, I was reminded of what happened on a Cinderella story. We were the actress, oh my God.
This is with Hilary Duff.
Hilary Duff and Jennifer, Oh God, she's a really funny actress. Anyhow, I will think of her name. Anyhow,
Love Hewitt.
what's that?
Love Hewitt.
No, not Jennifer Love Hewitt. That
No,
was
she was in the series recently. She was fantastic in the, yes,
Lotus, in the Lotus series.
in the
and
Lotus. Yeah, yeah.
Anyhow, she's a wonderful like improv actress. Anyhow, and
Oh, Coolidge.
Jennifer Coolidge, thank you. And so she was like, we had the diner set, we had all these scenes in the diner. She's like marching over places. I'm going, Jennifer, we're not lighting over there. Can you please stay over here? So yes, there are times when you have to restrain people, but generally the idea is block the scene first with the actors, then get it to where you like it, and the DP is involved and can be there and can whisper in your ear as the director, don't have them go over there, it's going to be terrible. Then you talk to your actors, and maybe you could go over here. Get that dialed in first, then light it, and then put the camera in, and that should solve those issues.
Great. That was a great question. And if you have a follow-up on that
Yeah,
question?
just that sometimes, how about when you put the tapes to indicate on the floor where they stand and go, that's after the actor has already
Yes, you're
kind of
getting it.
decided how he wants to move, and then you
Yes, you never want to do it the reverse, because it's going to hem in the actors and it's not going to be great. Now, there might be some certain times you're doing a big visual effect and they can only stand there. Yes, there are a few times like that, but generally it's always about the actors. It's what they do, and that's how you want it, because it's going to look the best that way.
I got a question. Is Premiere Pro popular software?
Yeah, Premiere, absolutely, and it's getting more and more popular.
I use Premiere.
Yeah.
I use
So do I.
Final Cut and Premiere.
Yeah, Adobe Premiere. Still the industry standard these days is Avid. I've tried to learn Avid. It's such a complicated, ridiculously constructed software. Premiere is supposed to be a lot easier. I did at one point cut a little bit myself just on Final Cut, but I would recommend Premiere. Yeah, I think it's a lot easier to learn. It's very good. Final Cut is also decent. It's just not at a professional level.
Well, it actually it's gotten there. I mean, and Final Cut is especially if you're on the Mac, Final Cut is, I've tried them both personally, and Final Cut is a lot easier, and it does pretty much everything. Maybe someone else has a different experience or comment on that, but
You mentioned DaVinci for color correction. Will the Premiere Pro still do a good job with color correction?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
By the way, thank you so much for your presentations. Really, really great.
Oh, you're welcome, Bruce. Thank you.
I have a question.
go
Yeah,
ahead.
sure, Ashley.
Sure.
Again, thank you very much. Was super interesting and inspiring. All your.
Can I just pause everybody for 1 second? Can you just, if you're going to ask a question, can you quickly introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit of what kind of background you have or what you'd like to get out of this meetup?
Yeah, so I'm a screenwriter. So I would like to I also, as a Andrea and I also moved recently in November to this area. I'm living in Orange. And of course, I would like I'm here for networking, to find the people with who I can work on making films, actually. Right now, I'm working on my own short film, which I'm realizing, or which I'm kind of making not as a short film, but as an animation. So what is my question? I graduated from film school also, but in another country, my home country. And so I would like to ask a question about good standard relations between screenwriters, between directors, because my experience, I think, as I know, it was pretty common. Then during kind of shooting a film in a collaboration kind of programs between directing program students and screenwriting students, there is a kind of a gray area which no one knows where is a kind of how it should go, who is the leading. Should be there some producer or some third party? Because sometimes, as I can see as a screenwriter, as a writer, my idea about how it would, I'm not talking about directing nuances, I'm talking about the whole movie, how it should be kind of what it should be what it would look like. Sorry,
Mhm.
my English. And sometimes directors have so different point of view, and many projects, not only for me, but many projects really they just crashed because there wasn't a kind of normal communication between writers and directors.
Okay, that sounds good. Mark, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah,
That question.
it's a great question, and it's not an easy answer. And I'm going to make a distinction between television and features because they operate very differently. In features, the director is the creative lead. There's no writer and director working it out. It's the director should be listening to a writer if they're on the set, but it's the director's movie at that point. And as a writer, it's the reason if you want to see as a writer your movie done the way you'd like to see it, you've got to direct it, or find a director who really sees it your way. Like you say, there can only be one leader, or else you're going to have total not only chaos, you're not going to have a good film because it's going to have two different competing voices. A film has to have one artistic voice. They can be fired by the producer, but they're fired. They're not going to make something they don't want to make. So in features, the director's the lead. When a screenwriter sells their script, it's in the hands of the director. If they're lucky enough, the director will invite them to the set and listen to them and hopefully value their input. And they can have great input. Unfortunately, the way it's gone in Hollywood a lot is the writers aren't on sets often in feature films. And that's for a lot of reasons. Sometimes there's been 10 writers on the script by the time you get to the set. And it's like, who do you even have on the set?
Now, Mark, for your films, for your feature films, correct me if I'm wrong, you've written and directed them all.
No. Cinderella story I did.
Oh, that's right. The Cinderella.
Perfect Man. About half of my movies.
You wrote Cinderella, didn't you?
No.
You rewrote it. You did a major rewrite.
No, I supervised the writer.
Okay.
To write it. And then she got rewritten about 5 different sets of writers that Warner Brothers loved the script that she wrote. The second they bought it, it was like, goodbye. We're bringing in the next one and the next one and the next one. And even one of the most highly paid script doctors in the world, a woman named Callie Corey, who wrote Thelma and Louise. Great writer. It didn't work out. I'll just put it that way. So it's got to be one voice. Now in television, it's completely different. It's not the director's voice. It's the writer. The writer's king in TV. They create it. All the showrunners and creative people and producers who are creative are writers. The writers are given the producing name and authority. And a director is more like a cinematographer in the fact that they come and go. They're a hired hand to try and give the vision that the writer, who's now the showrunner, has made for the whole show. So it's very much different in television. In features, you've got a screenwriter has to know that they give up control.
We're getting a little short on time here. So is there any more? Let some other people jump in. Just a quick question. Your name is very hard to pronounce. Where are you from? What country? Yes.
Yeah, hi. I'm Armenian. I moved from Russia.
Okay, great.
Right, welcome.
Anyone else like to?
I think I must have answered every question possible. And
well,
had
I actually have a couple. I have a few more.
All right, Katie has a question. Go ahead, Katie.
I guess it's less of a question and more of just a general interest. If you could speak more to this. So I'm a screenwriter, and I'm actually still in Minneapolis with plans of moving to LA in January. But in production of a short film and currently working on a couple different scripts and taking classes. But I'm just kind of wondering if you can give some insight of what it's like in a writer's room on set, like, or for like television, or I don't know if you've done so much of television as much as feature films, but just
Yeah.
like giving insight in the writer's room. I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, so you're talking about television. I've done directing in TV, because directing and writing in television is very separate. There are the directors, there are the writers, whereas in film, you can be a writer director. It's very rare in television. In TV, they have a staff, they hire a staff. It's run by the showrunner, who's usually the creator of the show, and they assemble a staff because they've got a lot of episodes to write, tons of them. And so they'll start with, they have a general sense of the show, but then they're going to have to break the story for each episode, meaning really figuring out what the A, B, and C story is for each episode. They look at the arcs of the whole season, and writers pitch out ideas. It's a very free-flowing thing. A lot of writers are sort of intimidated by that. You've got to be that type of personality that is kind of thinking on your feet. I'm like not like that. And I've written a lot, but I wouldn't do good in a writer's room because I kind of have to think about it for a little bit before I come up with ideas. Whereas you've got to be, almost like a comedian can think very quickly on certain things. So that's kind of what it's like.
So then, would you say? Sorry, I know we're running out of time here.
No, go ahead. We've got time.
Perfect. So then, oppositely with a feature film, then would you say that it's more common that you would sell, as a writer, you'd sell your script and then it would just kind of be like cut apart by a bunch of different people, but by like one person at a time, not necessarily a group of people?
Right.
Okay.
They do not, there's no writers' rooms for features, you're either going to pitch an idea and be hired to write that, and you're the writer until you're not, until you're fired, and they bring in somebody else. But it's more of a one or pair of writers working on it at a time. The only time they'd get a collective group, there have been very rarely sort of to do a punch up, a comedy punch up. Let's get a group of funny people together in a room and they're going to come up with great comedy lines. It doesn't usually work out too well.
Thank you. Thank you, Katie, for your question.
How about Salma?
Yeah. Please introduce yourself and where are you from and where are you in Los Angeles now?
Yeah, thank you, Mark and Stephen. So I am an actress who recently moved to Los Angeles from Austin, Texas. I am originally from Morocco. So I've worked on a couple short films and I even made the short myself and had a great time doing it, which made me want to start doing more of that. And because nowadays I feel like the best way to have more material is to create your own. So my goal is to be able to write scripts and make short films where I can play the lead role and convey my own story. So my question to you is how do you ensure a successful short when you are the director, the actor directing yourself and working with a crew? And is it a bad idea to want to do everything?
Can I just jump in here?
Yeah.
This can kind of lead into what I wanted to sort of close on, but we can bring it in, is she brought up what kind of makes a successful short film, if I understand the question. And I'd like, from your experience with all your, the student films and the shorts you make, what can you give a couple lines of what you've seen that have worked well, and what is the platform for what are you going to do with your short film, and is there any way to monetize?
Yeah. Well, I let me get to that. I think also part of Salma's question was, the challenge of directing yourself and doing everything. The short answer is yes, and there are a number of actors that do that. My suggestion is to not do that. I would maybe write it, but get a director who you like to work with, who gets you and understands you and can maybe really bring something even more than you can bring out yourself. It's very difficult. It can be done to direct yourself, but it's a challenge. But back to Stephen's question, What makes a good short film in a summary, again, it's script, then the cast, and then your direction is what I generally think of. And so it's the story. I think it's getting a really good idea, and then your take on that, and how that take is going to be unique and fresh and interesting and captivating. As far as how you can, where do what do you do with a short film? The main thing most people do with them is enter them into short film festivals. There's lots of them. There's some famous ones, obviously Sundance, South by Southwest, in somebody's hometown, Austin, I think, Selma. And there are plenty of lots of them. And in fact, there's a whole strategy on how to approach that. And there are people you can hire to help you to strategize film festivals. They can get seen, they can get talked about, they can get reviewed, they can get attention. That's the main thing, really, of where they end up. They're, as far as monetizing them, it's pretty rare you're going to make money. There are some companies. One of my students is just signed a deal for a distribution of her short film. She wasn't approached until it got into South by Southwest. It was screened there. It got into also the AFI Fest in LA. And then she was approached by a few distributors because that's where they go to look.
What was that about? Mark?
That film was about, it was a drama called El Carrito, about a cart, about a woman who is living in New York City on the streets, using her cart to sell things out of, like food, and then her cart gets stolen. And it's kind of if you know the old classic Italian film, The Bicycle Thief, it's very much like a street movie, very almost cinema verite, very semi-docu feel, but it was all cast and scripted. And she's gotten tons of acclaim out of it, and she's doing great with it. And
how long a film was that?
It's about 12 minutes.
12 minutes.
And she shot in New York. Here we are at UCLA. She's from New York, so she went, and we allow that at UCLA. You can go out to, we've had people go all over the world and shoot their short films for school. And it came out great, but she's never going to see a lot of money from it. And that's not the intention. You even go into making a short film about, the thing about short films are you're doing it for the joy of it. You're doing it for the experience, to learn how to direct, and possibly you're doing it as a launch pad to launch your feature film directing or your TV directing. And for that, I would recommend writing a short that's going to be a small version of your feature or a proof of concept of your feature, so that you can actually use the short when you're out hustling the money to make that low budget feature.
How much, I was going to follow up on that question. How often is that done, that people are doing shorts to try to promote a feature from
Often.
in at UCLA as well?
At UCLA, I would say maybe about 20%. So, but you add up all the people making short films. The film Whiplash started that way. They shot, I think, the opening scene of that film, and that's, by the way, you can see that online. It's amazing. And there's been a number of big films that started with shooting a short version of it, or you can also just do something that's the same genre. It's not going to help you that much if you do this wild comedy as a short and what you're peddling around is a dark drama. That's going to be a real disconnect for people.
Any other questions? Yes, go ahead.
Adriana,
yeah.
I didn't know if Wendy was going to speak. Were you going to ask something, Wendy?
To me?
Yeah,
Me, Wendy?
Were you
Hello.
going to say something? Okay.
Uh.
Yeah, just one more question logistically, because I was involved with a feature film, and I don't know when they're like, this was like a very low budget, $15,000 feature, and only because the actors were paid with points on the back end. This director had already sold the film prior, so everybody kind of believed in the project. And I was the first AD, and I was involved with the scheduling and the breakdown of the script. Is that standard? Because I know that sometimes that may not happen that way, depending when the first AD comes in or not. Do you find that that sometimes the director does that before? Like how with shorts, like who does that kind of all the pre-production part? Like, do you know what I mean? Like I know
Yeah.
that
And I got
might be a little different with like with bigger budgets, but
it actually isn't. I mean, in a short film, yeah, a lot of times the director's the only one around in pre-production. They're kind of taking on a lot of roles. But the AD, that's what they do. That's one of they do two things, the AD. They schedule in pre-production, and then they run the set to make sure that schedule actually happens on set. And they help the director do that. But the AD doing the schedule is exactly what the AD should be doing. So I don't know what you meant by the other things you were doing.
break
But
down the script, or does
like, what do you mean
everybody,
by that? What do you mean by
well, where
that?
you say these are the props, these are the,
Yeah, that's the
know,
AD
like-
breakdown. Absolutely. That was your job.
Yeah.
okay, and you don't have normally like an art department do their own breakdown of that. It's always the,
Well, no, each department, yeah, a wardrobe will give a list of that, and you don't have to break it down to that level. What you're breaking down for every scene are the cast, where it is, the location, the page count of that scene, how many script pages, any key props, just the key props, and then any unusual things like if you need a special effect that happens, something breaks on the set that you need to have multiples of smoke or any production issues. That's the AD breakdown. You don't go beyond that. You don't start scheduling art direction.
All right, we're just about out of time here. What I'd like to do is have some people that haven't spoken just briefly introduce themselves, tell their, share a little bit of what their experience is and what they would like to get out of this group. And I like to start on my top of my screen here because I'm in the gallery view with, is it Rickard?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. If you can just briefly, introduce yourself. You seem like you have quite a bit of experience doing short films.
I do. Well, I also have experience doing it through meetups because I did run the Let's Make a Short meetup, and we produced 5 short films, 2 of which won some short film competitions. And in my experience, basically it's a director decides to make the film and then collaborates with people in the team to get it done. So it really is still like, even when doing it through a meetup, it's still pretty much a one-man show where the director is the one who has to, push the whole project through to completion. In terms of what I'm looking for out of the group is other people to collaborate with. I am looking for an editor who I can team up with because I really don't, I can edit, but like you mentioned, having another creative mind that hasn't been involved at doing the edit is very important. Yeah, and then composers, music, things like that. Just other people who want to work on short films for free is kind of what I'm looking for. I think you're on mute.
Okay, Anton, want to jump in real quick? Introduce
Yeah.
yourself.
So I'm Anton Wilhelm Hubaltz. I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I've lived in LA for 6.5 years. I'm primarily an actor and a comedian, but I wanted to sit down in this because I was getting I had a friend who was talking about getting a group together to film our own content and small scripts.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah, so I wanted to get an idea of what to do in a team effort collaboration and what if it comes up maybe share some duties with some of the people that might be in the cinematographer chair and get some tips from this group. And I've done a lot of background work too, but you don't always know what the crew's talking about because they kind of leave us out of that loop. But I've been on sets a lot, and I've just finished an audition class, and I'm doing a Hollywood Fringe play this month. So I'm really trying to get all my business stuff ducks in a row. So I thought this was gonna be very helpful for me.
Thank you for sharing. And I'm going to have a hard time pronouncing the next person on my screen here. Song, help me out here. Yeah, unmute.
Yes, hi. I actually, yeah, that's my Korean name, but people call me Sean.
I like that.
Yeah, I was a editor. I edit it's like a half-hour entertainment show before. Now I work for a media company, but my current focus is just I'm trying to switch from Premiere Pro to DaVinci because DaVinci has all the not just editing, color grading, but also audio mixing and graphics. So that's what I'm going to focus on the rest of the year. And I'm not planning it writing any script. So with you guys, whoever work as project that I'm just going to help.
Thank you very much, Sean.
Mhm.
How about Bruce? Jump in for a second here.
Hi. So I lived in Connecticut up until about a year and a half ago, moved to California, to LA. I don't have any really professional experience per se. I've done a lot of things in theater. I've done sound design for some plays. I actually did a little, did the sound for a short little film that was made back in Connecticut. It went nowhere, but I took care of the composing music and did some sound there. I do a lot with my wife. She's a psychotherapist, but she produces a workshop. So I'm doing a lot of post-production in Premiere Pro, which is why I asked my question. I wouldn't call myself an expert in that, but I'm getting, you get pretty good with that. I've directed a few plays back in the day, and I really want to put some creative energy. I'm basically finished with my traditional career, and I want to put some creative energy into this type of work. So I'm very eager.
Thank you very much. Joy?
Hey, my name is Joy Ireland. I'm originally from Wisconsin. I've been here for 6.5 years as well, in LA. Sorry, here is LA. So I'm a SAG actor. I'm normally doing stand-in. So when I'm not, I'm trying very hard to get on anybody's short film because I would like to showcase my acting. I studied at UCB for my improv mainly. I also did character class there, so I did a lot of writing, but I mainly studied with Stella Adler, and I do Killian's for commercial as well. So I would like to say I know what I'm doing. So I would love to jump on anybody's film that they have, especially on the weekends when I'm not on set. I would love to showcase that. I actually just booked something this weekend for a SAG short, but other than that, that's what I'm here for.
Thank you very much. Diane?
Hey guys, I'm Diane. I'm actually up in Santa Barbara, a little bit out of LA.
That's a great location to shoot. Love
I
it.
love it here, but I actually am coming back around to more of a creative lifestyle. I've written a short first season of a television show, another pilot, and working on something else. And then I was thinking about a little something I wanted to get in front of the Discovery Channel. And I thought, you know what? You keep talking to people about things. Why don't you hang out with some people who are doing things, and you could learn how to do things instead of just writing them. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Thank you for sharing. Katie, you already, I think, share with us?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. So how about Wendy? You want to say hello?
Oh yeah, hi everyone. I'm so happy to be part of this meeting tonight. Thank you very much for the overview of making a film. I've worked on a lot of indie films over my lifetime, and just for fun, it was great. I did everything, whatever was needed. From casting, script supervising, set decorating, set photography, even some editing, and also some directing. I've written about 4 screenplays. One's their family comedy, dramedy, and I think, what my goal, first of all, I love working on films. I don't care what I'm doing. I like the collaborative effort. I think it's fantastic. I'm an artist too, but I like working with people. I don't like working solo, except for writing, that's okay. but I would like ultimately to write a very impactful documentary or produce work on one. That's really my goal. I have a couple subjects that are really important to me, and I'm just hoping I can get somebody interested.
Thank you, Wendy.
But I'm willing to help out on any project at this point and get to know some people.
Well, we got everybody here. We got our whole crew. We've got actors, we've got directors, we've got editors. Let's do it. The one thing that wasn't touched on a lot, and something I think I can bring to the table, is having a good producer. I'm a good creative producer. That's what I've done. I'm not per se a line producer, if everyone knows what the distinction is between the two. I'm good at developing the projects with the directors, the writers, to getting it to the point of getting it made, and then once in production, overseeing it in a collaborative process. So I think we all have something to bring to the table. I just thought it would be a good way to start out our first meetup. I hope you will spread the word and write some nice things about this meetup tonight. And I'm going to take this and put it in my brain, and we will reconvene in a couple weeks and go in more detail on, the next steps with the group. I think there's some very, talented people here. And so I'm going to officially close it, this meetup, but I will leave the room open for about another 10 minutes if people just want to chat amongst each other.
Well, I'd just like to chime in and just say thank you very much, Stephen, for organizing this. It was very generous of you to take your time to do that.
Well, I like you, I want to go back doing my passion. I ended up, like I said, not just happened, got sidetracked, and this film has always been my love. And it doesn't have to be a $50 million, $100 million movie. I've been involved in those, and believe me, they're not much fun. So this I'm looking forward to, and getting to know you guys better. So thank you on the official part. And like I said, I'm going to keep the room open for 10 minutes unfiltered, and I'm going to turn off the recording